I want to stay with you, Rafael, but I want to turn to another election right now, and that's the election that just took place in Brazil, the presidential election there. The right-wing candidate, Jair Bolsonaro, emerged victorious. He's sometimes been called the Trump of the tropics. Is that a fair comparison?
In some ways. Comparisons are always, you can't take them too far. But yeah, in some ways they are. He is a populist, he is a nationalist. He is more on the conservative side or right-wing, however you want to describe it. Some of the things he said have raised eyebrows, things he said racially about women, about homosexuals. So in that sense, and he does enjoy that spotlight. In other ways, he's very different. The man's been in government for basically his entire career. He was in the military and then in Congress. So he's an insider-outsider. So, I mean, he'd be more comparable to a Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, than to a Donald Trump in that sense.
Michael Johns, Bolsonaro and Trump, if you listen to what they say, they are ideological bedfellows in many ways. They share many of the same ideas. But what does his election mean for U.S. relations with Latin America and U.S. relations with Brazil, for that matter?
Well, it's hugely constructive. I mean, Brazil is the engine, obviously, of South America from an economic standpoint. You have now an incoming president who's looking at substantial privatization of Brazilian commerce and industry, who's going to relax some of the tight regulations, who's very growth-oriented, and is very committed to trade relations with the U.S. And I think it's essentially set up a story of two different courses taking place in Latin America. I mean, you had John Bolton today mention the troika of tyranny with Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Those are sort of the negative stories of socialism in real life, of what it really delivers for its people. And then you have in Argentina and Colombia and Ecuador to some extent, and now in Brazil, countries that are very oriented to market reform, that are very committed to democratic political accountability, that have run against corruption, and that are open to fostering greater trade relations in the Americas. So I think it really sets up two very contrasting visions. In some respects, that's existed for quite a while, but this election in Brazil really is driving it home.
So from what you're telling us here, do you feel that the reason that Bolsonaro won this election, well, the reasons that Bolsonaro and Trump won this election were very similar? Michael?
Well, I think the reason that he won predominantly was the fact that the corruption history in the Workers' Party was so substantial and well documented that there was great concern about continuing to go down that course. And there was, a lot of Brazilians who basically had seen enough. And they also have been watching very closely the developments in Venezuela, where, essentially they've seen a complete country fall apart from what was once an economic powerhouse in the region under socialism, and clearly don't want to go down that course either. So I think it sort of pointed to a fairly obvious conclusion, and he secured roughly 55% of the vote.
Right, Zhang, China is Brazil's biggest trading partner. Brazil's exports last year amounted to $50 billion. But during the campaign, Bolsonaro was actually critical of China. He portrayed China as a predator. So how is his election viewed by China?
I don't think China is feeling that much nervous on his victory in the election, and we know that might be very much political kind of rhetoric in the campaign. And I think President Bolsonaro is a long-time politician. He knows what will happen if he will completely choose another way. And I think Bolsonaro's main focus will be economic growth and the anti-corruption campaign. And in order to make economy in Brazil to develop, he definitely will need a lot of help from Chinese side when it comes to export, when it comes to investment and other kind of trade issues. I don't think China is feeling that much nervous. And I also say that the so-called difference between US and China in Brazil or other regional countries have been exaggerated. And I think China and America do not conflict directly in Brazil when it comes to economy and many other issues.
Okay, we've got a few seconds left. I want to go very quickly around the table on your best guess for the outcome next Tuesday, starting with you, Rafael.
I'll go with a safe one. Democrats take the House by 10 and the Senate stays Republican and they gain 2 seats.
I think Democrats take the House. I think Republicans will keep the Senate, but I think we will see a huge shift in the state races that will influence 2020, as in who's going to be running.
Right. So
I think it's conventional wisdom to say that the Democrats will take over the House and the GOP will retain the upper house.
Okay, Michael, very quickly.
It's conceivable that Democrats could take a slim majority in the House. The Senate clearly is going to stay in Republican control, and the big story of the night will be the fact that the high-profile far-left candidates of the Democratic Party will prove unsuccessful and will lose.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. Both the conversation continues online. Join us on CGTN America's Facebook page to comment on this or any other show, or chat with us on Twitter at CGTN America. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.